I'm really excited to welcome you all to join the session. I'm very excited about the things that we're going to discuss today. I would like to welcome our speakers, and I would like to start with Patricia. Patricia, would you like to introduce yourself to the community, please?
Absolutely. Thank you, Farid. Thank you for having me, and welcome to everyone. So I'm Pat. I lead the design ops practice at Tide, a UK-based fintech going on a global expansion. So super excited. I love the theme. I love the format. So looking forward to learning from your questions.
Thank you, Patricia. Dave, would you like to go next?
Sure. Thanks for inviting me, Farid. I think this is going to be great. So I'm Dave Malouf. I currently a design ops leader, coach, and yeah, I love making design ops happen around the world. So
I'm really excited to have you here with us today. Thank you very much. Z, would you like to introduce yourself to the community?
Hello, everyone. I'm Z. I lead the design operation at Cloudflare. We're an internet edge company, and I bring in a perspective as transitioning from design practice lead to design ops. I like to say I was a designer, and now I'm a design ops person. Nice meeting everyone.
Thank you, Z. We have Kristen Skinner on the call as well. Kristen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you so much. And welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm Kristen Skinner. I am a design leader who's been working as a designer and then moved into design management and design operations later in my career. I was the co-founder with Dave Malouf of the Design Ops Summit, which is now in its 5th year, annual conference, all about design operations and its evolution, which is where I got to meet Farid and Pat. And I focus now on mentoring and advising and consulting in design operations, primarily around org design. About 5 years ago, I wrote a book called Org Design for Design Orgs, building and managing in-house design teams. So a lot of my work focuses on the topics that are there that are still very relevant and prevalent. That's my story. Oh, and I'm also writing a book on design operations, which I'm happy to talk more about.
Thank you, Kristen. Yeah, my name is Farid Sabitov. I'm Figma DesignOps community advocate. I'm working at EPAM, and I'm really excited to be with all of you today in our session, where we will speak about design ops and the skill metrics for design ops. The goal of the session is to create a framework and create an open source skill metrics for design ops. We will not be able to cover everything, but today we would like to specify the main pillars, answer all your questions, and share the link after the session where we will gather all the things around the skill metrics. We'll make it open source and we'll share it with everyone. So it will be great if everyone will able to contribute and share their thoughts about the skill metrics, so it will be more collaborative work and we will be able to help the disciplines to standardize our skills, knowledge, and all other things as well. So the agenda for today, we have only 1 hour, and it will be more like as a collaborative discussion. I see a lot of cursors here. That's great. So you can add your screenshot from your Twitter, so everyone will able to know you and be more connected as well. So please do that. Share your Twitter handles or Twitter screenshots here on the intro section. But we would like to go through with the speakers today through the org structure, career path, and start speaking about the skills. Again, it's co-creation session. Our speakers will add more slides during the discussion. So please share your emotions, share your reactions and questions directly in Jam file. So I would like to start with the org structure. I added a couple of thoughts here, so I would like to start the discussion, and dear experts, please share your thoughts if you don't agree with something or you have other things to add as well. So when we are speaking about the org structure, I've visualized here different things, different pillars. The first one is the team that is focusing mostly on the product. The second one, as a red one, you can see the people, the teams that are focused mostly on the management and coordination, when we are speaking about design system manager or design manager itself. Operations, the people who are focusing mostly on the way work. It could be design ops, it could be research ops, it could be product ops or DevOps, etc. Of course, we have the leadership team of like VP of design or design director who is responsible for all the other things. So my first questions to their speakers, what do you think about this diagram? Do you agree or you would like to change it in somehow?
I like the blob of design ops. It's like it's oozing and going everywhere. You know, I think that says a lot about the nature of design ops in a way. Like it starts as one thing and then becomes something else as an organization scales, as it gains influence, as it gains, you know, so I like that. I don't want to get too much into like where design systems is versus, you know, other parts of the org, but like just concentrating on that like visual of design ops being this sort of pervasive element through practice, through resources, through execution, through systems or tooling. And, you know, it does, I do get that it's like, it permeates throughout.
I agree with Dave, but I think that there's another side of the blob. I mean, design is a participative, collaborative, cross-functional function. So design ops doubles down on cross-functionality, because to be able to have an impact on designers' life, we need to work with a lot of different stakeholders, from the marketing folks, the engineers folks. So if you look from an influencing point of view, I mean, I see the 360, 3D dimensional blob that actually potentially touches nearly every business unit and every part of the organization. But perhaps I'm just a megalomaniac and I'm thinking too big.
Cool. I just added my mapping. I really like the way that you have it really organically mapped out. And I also like Pat's her very systematic way of mapping it out. What I highlighted on my side, I think now a lot of the design ops leadership, we're kind of working closely with people to more migrating into more of the strategy side of the business. So it's not a clear division, no longer a clear division of, you know, the design leaders, you know, take care of the business and everything. And then design ops is more into the operation per se. I started to see more and more migration for the design ops leaders getting into the strategy side. And I think that's a really important development for the field.
I think this is all representative of exactly what's happening across industries and across teams of all sizes. The entry points are fluid. The overlaps are often a little bit messy. But what I've just added just below what Z shared is a way to think about the organizing principles or pillars of design operations and design management. If we focus on the people and the practice of design, we can focus on some key areas. You could call them initiatives, programs, et cetera, which is what's in white in the bullet points in the middle, in service of these specific outcomes. So if we focus on initiatives that support people who are designers, researchers, content strategists, et cetera, we'll have happier designers by doing these types of activities and have dedicated design ops teams towards them. In the center, all of the work that we're doing is about the design practice, and it's about being able to create better designers and support better designers, not only in the work that they're doing, but in their careers as well through training and professional development. And then the far right is what I think about when I think about design ops specifically as a role, is around creating platforms and being a service provider to really help to elevate the rest of the organization. So the first two are essential. You can't focus on the practice without the people, and you can't have better designers without trying to make sure that they are having a good experience and that they're well supported. So all of these things do fit together nicely, but I would say that where you get started really just depends on where you are in your journey. You know, if you come into an organization and you find that the team is really struggling with tools, or there's no common place to understand or to communicate how the work is getting done, that's a really clear indicator that you could start with focusing on the practice or the platforms. If you are a leader and you can't, you know, you're noticing turnover or attrition, and you're really trying to get a pulse of your organization and you're finding that the teams are just generally unhappy, then you can really take a step back and think about, do we have clear career paths? Are performance reviews happening equitably across the organization? Is it clear about where people are headed? And are we paying our employees fairly? And so a lot of these things you will find, and this is, I think, echoing what others are saying, is that you'll be doing a lot of your work cross-functionally across the organization, and it may feel like you're not spending a lot of time with design initially, but as your team grows and scales, you can figure out how to structure it so that people are getting support, teams are getting support, and then the organization is getting support.
Thank you. So let me check if we have any questions from the listeners. If not, we can go to the next section, the career path. This is really interesting for me personally, like how a lot of people are asking the question, how I could become a design ops. Is it the person who can just like become a design ops without having any experience in design? Or is it the person that requires some work that needs to be done in advance, some experience that this person needs to gather first to become a true design ops person, to have such role? I added one of the examples from my colleague, friend, Vladislav Averin from Pandadoc. I like the way how they visualized three main dimensions, three main tracks: operations track, individual track, and management track.
I just wanted to read the question properly to get, because yes, it's true. There's a bottleneck at a principal level, and it's, I think, a big issue because, you know, people are growing fast and scaling. And the thing is, it's a problem that I'm facing now on how to structure those hybrid journeys where you may be doing some operational work, some people management work, and some IC work, and how you grow. What is the intermediate level? And I think that as more the companies and design teams are maturing, the more we will be able to invent, revolutionize. Perhaps there's a gap and a new opportunity to be created beyond principle that needs to be recognized. Yeah, I don't know if I answered your question, Bassam, because I was trying to figure out what I was doing and how to apply what I'm working on to your question. So my answer may be biased my experience of today, actually.
So I'll jump in and maybe even be a little controversial. Very, 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 very few organizations have needs for ICs that are at principal, let alone above principal. It's just a reality. You need to have management. You need to track people. You need to guide people. You need all of that. It's very rare for the business to have that requirement. That said, the way I often think about it is, well, what are my peer organizations doing and how are they doing it? Because they have more scale. And the scale is really what allows you to have that capability. So in my experience working for a 300,000 person company like Hewlett Packard, they had that scale in their engineering teams. They didn't really have the scale in their very decentralized and thus smaller design teams. And so, but what I did is I looked at the engineering organizations and I saw, well, they have a principal and they have distinguished and they have fellow, right? And then I looked at who these people were and I had a chance to work with some, and quite often they were managers when they hit a certain level. They weren't pure ICs, but what they managed was like a special expertise area for the most part. And they managed principals who are also experts in that. And large organizations like HP and IBM, at those levels, start to bring in a lot of academia into it. And that kind of changes how they think about these roles and these positions. Like a fellow at HP was often thought of as they have a PhD in something related to HP's technologies almost. And they earned that PhD in a way that allowed them to be seen as that level of credentialed, right? And I think that that's something that definitely startups don't need or don't have. And you know, even many thousands of people companies don't need and don't have to be able to do that. The other framing I would put on this is ask yourself the question, what would an executive individual contributor or a person whose focus is leading the work as opposed to leading the people would be? What does it mean to be executive at leading the work? And if you can't answer that question, then most likely you don't need it. So why structure it to create it? And just to have it, I think creating it just to have it doesn't always make sense in my mind. So.
Yeah, if I can chime in, under your career path, I added my view of career path. Instead of thinking of IC versus people manager, you know, a parallel path, I just look at my own experience that I start to kind of when you come into the industry, you're more on the IC side, and then it become not a linear path. You go, you know, doing maybe years, and then you come back to do IC, and you go from a bigger organization like Dave mentioned, you know, look at the scale, and then maybe then you go to a smaller company, and then so it becomes less linear. Instead of thinking of a parallel path, we start to think about, you know, developing people. What do I want to do? Get to a certain point that, you know, that path become less important for individuals, but individuals' contribution is pushing those glass ceilings. So how can we actually elevate as IC from all different perspectives? I go to the management route and then come back to IC. So in return, I bring the IC level a little bit higher. And then you go to the larger company, you come to a smaller company, no longer linear, you know, path.
Thank you, Z, for your slide. I really like it. So, like, the question is, like, if someone would like to start as DesignOps role, what is the career path for like this DesignOps person? Is it starts from individual contributor, or is it starts from people manager, or what are your thoughts on that?
Love to. My thoughts are that it's really based on less of a traditional training methodology or a specific career path. It's more about a set of attributes and how you approach your work. The work, in my experience, the folks who have been most successful as design ops practitioners, design program managers, have been really willing to be ambassadors, to be folks who can come in almost from a neutral standpoint and perspective, synthesize sort of what's happening from multiple points of view, and lead teams and people toward common solutions. So that's a pretty broad remit, and you could be successful whether you are a professor in a previous life, or you're just coming out of college, or you're coming from finance. I've seen folks from all of those different backgrounds and many, many more be successful in this role. And the teams that I've set up, so the first team of design program managers and design ops folks that I was able to really establish an in-house after I worked at Adaptive Path, which was consulting. We only had a team of 3 people there where we first established the role, but after Adaptive Path was acquired by Capital One, I had the opportunity to lead the service design team and the design program management practice and set it up to grow from 1 to 25 in just 18 months. So I needed to create a structure that supported coming in at the most senior level, so being a partner to a VP of design, which required strategic skills, negotiation, facilitation, selling, funding, finance, all of those things. And then deciding, okay, once we have that person in place, they can actually run their team like a studio. And the way that we set it up was that it was a centralized partnership. So it wasn't quite embedded and it wasn't quite centralized. It was a combination where we had all of the heads of design rolling up to a singular leader, and then all of the design program managers, design ops folks rolling up to a single leader. And I mentioned that just to provide context about the role itself. So you could have been an individual contributor your entire career. You could have been a technical program manager, project manager, producer in an agency, came from marketing, branding, etc. But again, I always tried to think about not the pedigree or the experience that somebody had, but really the attitude and the the aptitude and the appetite for coming into something very ambiguous, at least in my most recent experience, and establishing something that maybe didn't even exist before. Not in service of trying to create something completely new, but taking elements of very successful things and taking inspiration from things that had already been successful, like finance and many things that our recruiting and HR partners already have in terms of process, and applying those to design rather than trying to create something new.
Yeah, and if I can add, I love what Christian is saying, because design ops is a mindset. However, I think that before being a mindset on its own, it also needs the support of the understanding of design processes. So I came to design ops after 20 years in UX research, and I was doing ops and I didn't know for 2 decades nearly, because my mindset is how can I drive efficiency? And then knowing how the design thinking work, how your organization is embedding design thinking and the design process in their end-to-end journey helps you. I mean, I've seen some program managers, DPMs joining from different industries and really not being able to contribute and have an impact because they lack the underlying knowledge of what is design. So I would say it's a mindset, but it needs the understanding of what is design, because that's what makes design ops special and magic.
True. But from my side, like, I would say, like, that's my thoughts, and please say if you don't agree with them, is that I think the successful design ops person needs to feel all the challenges and all the pain points that individual contributors has. And like, without this experience from my side, without doing the user research, without synthesizing all this large amount of data, without prioritizing the work and speaking with a lot of stakeholders and collaborating with product managers and working with front-end like developers and etc., I believe like the person who already had this experience will able to feel the designer problems and will able to suggest more interesting solutions maybe that will help them not only to improve the efficiency, but also seeing the whole system, how designers not only working as like designers inside design teams, but also how they are collaborating with other disciplines. And I believe that that might give more insights for like this person in the future. So we have a couple questions here from Lisa. Looks like it's not a question, it's more like a note, but let me read it. This chart shows a design ops path, but not all design ops people start out as designers. So the variety of backgrounds isn't represented by this chart. Dave, what do you think about this note?
Yeah, so my take is definitely right. I think there's, just like design ops has many starts. I've noticed an infinite number of starts as I've been interviewing people and hiring people and stuff. I have noticed like a gravity towards two trends in design ops, and one major trend is starting from program management. And the people who find design ops from program management tend to have found whatever their path or reason was, they found themselves working for agencies, design agencies as program managers. And so they gain the design literacy that they need from the exposure of working in that environment in that way. And then the other path is through the designer path, is the other one where people like myself, I'll brutally be honest, discover I'm not as good of a product designer as I am a design operator. And I gravitated towards design operations for a long time, you know, before finding the home. And, you know, I discovered it because I kept being the annoying person in every company I worked for who kept asking the operational questions and everyone else just wanted to do design. And I was like, okay, I guess this is what I do. And found, I think the way Z put it is like, I was a practice manager, right? I was like the head of interaction design, but I wasn't like managing the designers. I was the head of the practice and the quality and the how and those kinds of questions, because design ops didn't exist yet. And then that slowly became, design operations in my trajectory. Other people found it in other ways, and maybe never had the title of design operations in their career, but have been doing it for quite some time, is the other path, The way I became a designer is through anthropology and learning how to do HTML, because no one in my grad school wanted to learn how to do it, right? And so then all of a sudden I was a web designer. Would I ever tell anyone to do that path to become a designer? Of course not, but that was my path. And the same thing will happen for design ops until we mature the practice and mature education and training and things like that.
Great, thank you very much. So I believe right now we have enough context to switch to the next section called skills. That is the most exciting one, where we are going to ask all our speakers to share what they think, which kind of skills a true design ops person needs to have. So
you already have some buckets, for the skills, and I'm going to copy the top 3 buckets that I identified. They're really rough overall, and many folks mentioned before, because we really came from different background. We have held different types of jobs and then different, experiences. And Pat mentioned that design ops, it's a mindset. So these are the top, mindsets that I identify for a design ops person is important to have. And I'm curious to hear more about other folks. I'm not going into the details, specific skills, but these are more of a top level buckets. Leadership, you could come from any path and then have this leadership. You don't have to be a manager to be a leader. And system thinking, we need to be able to actually, bring some order into the system in the chaos and communication. I find that a very important mindset, either it's internally or externally. And I find that very important, essential.
System thinking, because I totally agree. System thinking is key, because what we do has an impact on people, on the system, on the business, on other teams. So definitely system thinking. But I would say change management. Design ops is a transformational function. So if you're not able to bring your team, your leaders, your organization on that transformation, you may be excellent in designing the best processes and the best flows and ways of working, but you will never get anywhere. And I think that an analytical mind, data focused, because design ops complements design leader by adding the how. The focus of the ops is, hey, you designer wants to do that, the product, the service, how you do it, that's my ownership. And to explain the how, you really need to understand what empowers, what are the critical elements, what are the efficiencies and the impact that you can create. And I'm trying to create the dots and let Kirsten or Dave or you, Farid, tell us your top 3.
I totally agree. Systems thinking is the core. I don't really agree with the leadership, because and please share your feedback, because we have design directors, we have VPs of design who is responsible and who is providing that leadership to the whole organization. I would agree with the leadership part if we will have a team of design ops people, and there might be one design ops lead who could organize, who could coordinate other design ops practitioners. But I don't think that there is a pillar of leadership in design ops. It's more like supporting, helping the leadership team to achieve their goals for operational improvements and ideas and practices. But I will thoughts from other speakers as well. What do you think about the leadership part?
I'll jump in on that one. There's lots of kinds of leadership, right? And I would, I've converted my design ops practice to be one where Arguably, it's become kind of like a chief of staff role. And I love that. I love that I have a different kind of co-leadership. And it's sort of like you could be a CEO or you could be a chief operating officer. And the operations side is still requires leadership in order to be successful. Some of that leadership is leadership without authority. It's a lot of influencing and guiding and being able to set vision for things. You're just setting vision for a different kind of thing. You're not setting vision for the design direction. You're setting vision for the operational direction. And you need to work with people. You may even need to have people who you manage in order to achieve that. So I think that there's a lot of necessity of leadership throughout, the same way that I would want a senior designer to have leadership qualities who's not, not even at a lead level or a principal level. I would still expect some level of leadership qualities there from them. Because it's not differentiating. Like, leadership is something that is pervasive throughout an entire enterprise. But like, what are the three things that I think make a design operator different than some other leaders?
I've been doing quite a bit of work for design organizations around professional development, career paths, levels frameworks. And one of the sort of organizing structures that has really resonated with me has been about kind of looking at it through a series of dimensions. So if you start with primary vectors of development, you can think about it from the practice perspective. And then you could add two other layers. One is influence and direction. So things like, who are you working with? Who are you partnering with? What influence do you actually have? What decisions do you get to make? And then the third one is complexity. So how complex is the environment you're working in? How many business units is your team supporting? How many licenses does the team need to have for different products and services? How many audiences do you actually have? So there's practice, complexity, influence, and direction. And then if you take that down, the next level to me is really about the skills. So exactly what we're talking about right here. And design has core skills, and you can break those down even further. And DesignOps has core skills. So I just started to add them in. And the way that I've structured it is I think about core or craft skills, and in this case, specific to DesignOps, and then strategy skills, and then interpersonal and professional skills. And often I find that teams and organizations orient around one, maybe two, certainly not all three of these things. So if you were to put this on a levels framework and you could see the progression across different levels within your organization and different roles, you could see maybe on one side, you've got everything that's core for DesignOps, and then you've got what's supplemental. And the benefit of having something like this is that you can actually pull from all of the same core skills in your design organization for every role that you have. So in this case, I think I've covered 8 or 9 different roles, everything from user research, content strategy, accessibility, design operations, and of course, design, from the same bucket of, I think, 18 different skills that fall under these 3 categories. So core, strategy, and then personal, interpersonal. And you may personal, interpersonal may resonate with you as soft skills, but I'm trying to move away from that sort of terminology and language because it can be gendered and it's not as progressive as it should be. So that's a way to think about cataloging sort of your primary vectors of development, the skills that you have, and then break that down to the roles that you have, articulate what the roles are responsible for within this rubric, and then you can start to think about, okay, well, what does progression look like for each of those roles at each of those levels within your organization? And that's where you really need to partner with HR in their systems to make sure that you're in the right job families, and that you've got equity amongst engineering and product management, and that a senior manager in design operations is not 3 levels down from a senior manager in product management, as an example. So going through this exercise can uncover a lot of organizational challenges, but I encourage you all to at least try to do it for yourself and for your team, and take leadership and ownership of it.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine. Go through the other things and try to group all these things that we heard today to create a framework that we all like and we all agree with. So we spoke about the leadership, we spoke about the systems thinking, communication, change management, and etc. I saw that we have 2 sticky notes for communication, so I just grouped it together. Another thing that we have here at the top, I added like a couple days ago, is first of all, I believe that DesignOps person needs to have holistic thinking. I believe that this person needs to have a lot of tons of experience to see not only how specific person is doing their work, but thinking on the systems level. And only holistic thinking and tons of experience could give such opportunity. I'm speaking about not only design, but also how product managers are working and how designers could affect their work and contribute and work together. The same thing for other disciplines as well. So I believe holistic thinking could help, and please tell if you don't agree or you would like to add other things as well. The second part, again, it might be my bias by working in DPAM, but I think the consultancy, DesignOps, is more about the consultancy, is more about helping specific teams to achieve some specific goals, to increase their maturity level. Again, consultancy means it's assessing the current situation in specific teams, understanding where are the gaps, preparing a roadmap and understanding what kind of things we could bring from operations perspective, testing that practices with specific teams and gather feedback, create onboarding material, create engage others by doing workshops and trainings that will help others to learn more about specific practices that are recently added to the organization. It's really close to the communication. Yeah, but I would like to hear other thoughts as well. Let me just spend some time on the background to group all these things, but I would like to hear others. What are your thoughts on the things that we discussed?
I see people start to grouping, these stickies and everything. In reality, it is really complex. So if you think about any of these top, categories, and there's a lot of detailed skills, I like to think about it's really not just a one-to-one direct connection for, you have certain level and then you have to have these skills. Typically, when we look at a person, we want to really encourage the person to really bring the best of self and then bring your superpower. We kind of want people to think about their career path, how that maps into the need of specific design org's need at the moment. Look into your design maturity of the company, see what are the skills actually at that moment it's needed. And I see people, highlighting process and everything. And if I see a lot of time earlier organizations tend to lean more on the process side, and then sometimes forget about, we need to set the strategy and the vision for it. So that's when design ops people can actually bring this kind of balance, the maturity of the design of maturity in the company, and then bringing these skills. So, and I'm also thinking a lot of folks have different backgrounds. Definitely my journey is different than yours. And I was a designer, so I utilize a lot of design skills, prioritization and these kind of skills into the design ops. But if you come from a different background, like Pat, you have an entirely different background. You bringing all that kind of skill into your design ops. So I'm interested in learning more how folks are thinking about how can we actually really bring in the superpowers, mapping into Christian's, different way of thinking about leveling and holistically.
Yeah, I mean, you're touching a fantastic point, Z, and it's something that is true. I mean, my background is research, so for me, it's data-driven. It's how can I prove the value of the work I do, not with narrative and just telling, hey, design ops is cool, but hey, I saved 60% of the budget. Hey, we cut the delivery time by 20%. So my research background enabled me to make a business case for design ops in the org and let it grow. So, but I speak less design on the end, but you need to have, I think, one of the superpowers as we mentioned, it's strategy. I mean, you can't design a process if you don't have a strategy in mind, if you don't know where we are and where do we want to go. I mean, a strategy is not something you put into up today and you have to redo from tomorrow. It's something that delivers value, and having the vision. And I see DesignOps as a highly strategic function that focuses on the how, on the team, on performance, on creating efficiency and optimizing things, and how we do the things. So it's really all that. But as Z was clearly saying, I'm a researcher. That's how I see the world, and this is how I see operations. It's part of executing a strategy and a vision.
100. I think that often gets lost. It's such an important component in all of our roles, but specifically for design operations, because you're operating at so many different levels at any given time and during any given process, and really trying to, again, research, look at the data, gain insights, synthesize the information in a way that's compelling, and that you're constantly trying to make the case for something, for or against, or with. So yeah, there's a lot of challenges there, and it's, I think, one of the things that is maybe the next horizon, if you will, is where do you go in the context of career development? When is design ops done? It's never done. So do we move into these COO roles? Do we take our experience and move into a chief of staff role? Like, what does the hierarchy look like there? Is there even a hierarchy? It really depends on the context of your organization and what the appetite is. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity, and I'm super excited about it. I see so many roles becoming developed and advertised lately, which are, VP level, that are really focusing on practice management, much more specific language about outcomes, which is fantastic. It's not just come in and fix broken shit, excuse my language. It's really being strategic and thinking about how do we elevate the organization? How do we create a role that can really be an accelerator? When we see these ratios, typically companies don't hire a design ops person if their team is less than 20 people. That's really an inflection point. And there was a comment in the chat around sort of the recognition that if you have somebody who is focusing on more of the managerial and operational side of the business, then designers actually gain more time by having to do less jockeying for meetings times and coordination and communication, all the work about the work, which really bogs everything down. So time is precious. There's never enough of it. There's enough of it, but this role really can accelerate and enable a much larger constituency than just, if you had a 1 to 5 or 1 to 10 mapping.
I love the ambiguity in where this design ops, persistence can continue growing and going. I know that in one of the charts I mapped it out, I love the Maria Judy's a few years back wrote about this whole book about the DEO's position, right? So in the past, we always think about business leaders going to the DEO, designers going to the DEO. What is there to say design ops couldn't be moving towards that, more strategic leadership role? And it's just beginning right now, the design ops.
Possible, absolutely.
But it depends also where you want to go. I mean, why not COO? Once you have the mindset, the skill, the ability to quantify impact and to speak the design language and the business language, picking up a different language, the marketing language, the salesman language, or whatever other language, it's just something that you can do. And once you understand how things work, making them working better, it's just transferring skills. And I believe that the design ops mindset and the background we all share, that it's different, enables us to transfer skills. But it depends where do we want to go as individuals, not as a discipline.
I think it speaks to just the expansiveness of leadership, right? Like, you can say the same thing about like how designers move towards product management, how design leaders just become leaders, right? In businesses, that like once you start like leading, you start to realize that to have impact, that scope needs to be more complex. It needs to have different angles to it in order for you to be successful. And there are many ways to do it, but to like simplify it is you change your role to take on the things that impact your team's ability to do that, or you partner with those who are able to do it. I also just want to throw out, like, for myself, I often think about, would I ever really want to be a COO? Would I really want to be a chief of staff to somebody not in a design organization? Would I really want to run general operations in some way? And the answer for me is no. I love design. I may not be a good designer anymore, but I love design, and I think that's okay. So for me, I've taken this like partnership approach, which means I need to have those skills in influencing and those kinds of relationship types of skills that I work on. But that's also okay. I think like we don't need to only, we don't need to force ourselves to expand in any way. Like, it's okay to like to still have that, and not everyone needs to be in the C-suite either. There's not enough room for all of us to be in the C-suite. Though I would love to be chief of staff too, like a chief design officer, so I could be next to the C-suite. Yeah.
So Dave, a question for you. Do you see design ops tend to be more of a partnership behind theme type of folks getting into this role? I'm curious. I have my opinion, but
You can't be successful without partnerships, no matter like where you are in like a team of one or a team of 1,000, right? Like, it's always going, every executive is about partnerships. You can't run everything. So it's either partnerships or delegation at a certain point, right? Like, even the CEO delegates, which is, delegation's a form of partnership when you think about it. And so partnerships are key to being successful, for sure. But yeah, so I answer it yes.
Thank you.
Which is why career paths need to be flexible enough to accommodate that as well, because I have had that role on my last 2 teams and wanted to make sure that it was fair and equitable for the people in that role.
Yeah.
To be the rest of the organization. Great point.
Thank you. So we captured all the main things, but again, as we discussed, we need to be flexible, so that technologies should be the core pillar of like design of skill metrics, but it could be as an additional. I just wanted to clarify and get your feedback, the final thoughts on the way how we structured that. The first one is systems thinking, when we're thinking about the system processes, holistic thinking, and etc. The second part is strategy mind, leadership, working on different levels, business and product strategy, and etc. The interesting part, and I believe like this is like also the core one, is change management. How, if we are speaking about design ops, it's more about the change management, how we could engage and motivate others to change and unlock these possibilities. The last one, consultancy. When we are speaking about communications, education, doing some workshops, assessing teams, and helping teams to achieve their goals. Do we all agree with the way how it's structured, or you would like to rename some of these pillars?
I just love how actually this conversation led to the concept that it's a mindset. We didn't call out any hard skill, forgive me, Kirsten, hardcore skills like, hey, you have to be a genius in this platform and that technology. It's all about strategic skills, mindset that enable design teams and design operations to thrive. So I just find it fascinating, and I love this.
Added a heart emoji, smiley face heart emoji to all of this. I think it was a great exercise. I'm really happy with how much we were able to generate today, and encourage everybody to use this as inspiration, or just take it straight up and see if it fits within your organization, for sure. And I guess, Fareed, the question back to you is, how do we stay connected to this? How can we see how it evolves over time as part of the community?
Yeah, like the goal here was to create a framework first, and I believe we specified the main pillars. And again, it will be flexible. We will specify core and optional skills and knowledge and all of the stuff. After this session, I will share the recording and the Coda.io template where everyone could contribute. And I would like to engage and motivate others to contribute to this template, because we will able to gather all our knowledge and also standardize the way how we see DesignOps role in the future. And at the end, we will be able to share that publicly as open source, and also we will share that in Figma community. We have a lot of interesting, we have a lot of people there who is looking for this kind of things that will help them to evolve their careers as well. Yeah, Dave. Yeah, sorry.
Wonderful.
This has been great. Great conversation. I always love those things. People can add others, but I put 2 events that I'm involved in. I know Christian's involved in the DesignOps Summit. It's always a great event. The curation team is wonderful this year, as always, and I'm really looking forward to it, being an attendee for the first time. And so it's going to be great. And then I'm really excited about this event coming up in June, from June 11th to the 20th, to help raise money for what's happening in India due to coronavirus, COVID. It's called Cause, by the Design Up organization, which is a wonderful annual conference in and of itself in India, in Bangalore every year, and they're doing this virtual version. And so many wonderful people are donating their time, donating their money, and it's kind of like a design live aid, and for those who have that generational perspective. And yeah, I'm really excited, and I hope if you can't attend, please at least donate. I'm leading a panel specifically on remote design ops with some great folks from around the world, so a global perspective on it from very different organizations. I'm really, really excited about that, and just seeing all these amazing people come together for this cause.
Thank you. Yeah, we will also add all these links to our email that will be shared after the session with all the resources that we spoke about, and the link to the Coda.io template where we are going to vote, contribute, and discuss which kind of skills and knowledge might be interesting and valuable for future DesignOps roles. Thank you all for coming to this session. Thank you all for all the speakers, Z, Patricia, Dave, Kristen. It was a pleasure to speak with you all. I believe we are doing really important thing for the community, to help the community to evolve and standardize the way how DesignOps is seen on the market. Thank you for joining.